Welcome into episode 420 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott, we are in the midst of the Bruins West Coast trip, which is doing no good to anybody's sleep schedules. But before we get into our opening shifts, before I forget, because I always do, I want to plug that our next episode, which will be coming out Thursday.
After the Anaheim game.
Okay, so Thursday we'll be doing a mailbag episode. So email us at theskatepod@weei.com. Comment on this video on YouTube or any of our recent videos. Bridget always kind of surfs the web for some comments from recent episodes.
I have to, sometimes I go through and I'm like, oh man, I really wish I didn't read these today, but I do read them. So yeah.
And obviously you can tweet at any of us on Twitter and obviously at the Skate Pod account as well. So any way you can reach us, we'll gather all your comments and try to get to all of them next episode. But
yeah, we already have quite a few, so people want to get in there. We got some good ones already, so we'll be recording that Thursday morning and hopefully up by like midday on Thursday.
So Bridget and Scott, it is a abysmal stretch for the Boston Bruins as it pertains to the win-loss column. We had a feeling that this would happen post-deadline. I want to reiterate, the Bruins, with the guys that they had before the deadline, were already a really bad hockey team. So I know everybody's going crazy.
They were better than this, though. I mean,
they were better. They were better.
This team playing like this, if this was the roster all season, like their number one pick, like their worst team in the NHL.
Is it too late? Is it too late for that?
Yes.
Scott?
Like, I mean, we just saw them get out, lose to San Jose on Saturday and get outplayed. Like,
unfortunately, yes, it's too late to make up the ground that San Jose has on first place. And there's a few teams I don't think they're catching. They could be top 5 though. I think they could be top 5.
Yeah, let's hope. All right, so they lost to San Jose. They lost to Vegas. They lost to the Kings. You got the Ducks coming up. Why don't we just get right into the opening shifts, because it is a 6-game losing streak, 6 regulation game losing streak, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it 5?
1 overtime in there, right? Buffalo?
Yeah, 1 overtime loss, yeah.
Okay. So either way you cut it, you're losing to Buffalo, you're losing to San Jose. These are basement dwellers, which, again, as Scott mentioned, the Bruins, if this was their roster all year, they would be there as well. Who wants to go first? Scott, Bridget?
Bridget can go first because she has the one almost exciting thing that happened Sunday.
Yes, almost is the key word there, and I think Bruins fans needed this to happen. I think Swayman needed this to happen. I think just, people on their couches who are about to fall asleep because it was such a late game needed this to happen. But there's a play when the score was 3-2. Kuznetsov was on a net drive, kind of crashes into Kuemper. and so it starts a little bit of a scrum between those two and it starts to escalate. And as Swayman sees Kuemper getting into it with Kuznetsov, he's like, oh my gosh, my time to shine. Let's do this. I've been waiting for this. So he comes out to center ice and he's taunting him and he's trying to get him to come fight him. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, it's happening. I'm out loud. I'm yelling at my TV, it's happening. And so because Kuemper's like, sure. And I'm like, oh my God, it's actually happening. And that was going to be the exciting part of the night for sure. But what happens? Immediately broken up. They don't even get one punch. Nothing.
Cowards. Absolute cowards of officials.
Yeah, I don't even know if they got within a foot of each other. They just were not, they did not let them get anywhere near each other, which was so infuriating. I'm sorry, tell me, how good was the start of the first US-Canada game in 4 Nations? And tell me, who was talking about hockey when that happened? And who would be talking about that fight right now, even if the Bruins lost 7-2 like they did? the entire city of Boston would be out here being like, at least Swayman smoked him, or you know what I mean? Like that it would be that would be what people were talking about today. Not
It would have
just
been on sport. Would have been on Sports Center. Would have gone viral.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yep,
the skate pod would have tweeted it out. The skate pod account would have tweeted it out. It would have been mainstream, you know.
Instead, I'm sitting on my couch tweeting out, this should be illegal to break up a goalie fight because it's like it's just so anticlimactic. And I'm sorry, we've all seen goalie fights. Some of them suck. Some of them are amazing, and they make you like hockey even more. And then you're like, all right, I need to see one of these. And now I would have been a little disappointed it wasn't at TD Garden because I want to see it in person. But I still would have taken it, especially it woke me up. Like I was like leaned back in my couch, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it's happening. And yeah, I woke my cat up. I don't know. He wasn't happy, but neither was I when I found out that it was just a tease and we didn't get it. And this will lead into the other opening shifts. That was kind of where it all went downhill. It was a 1-goal game at that point in time. And like, if you let Swayman fight, I feel like he's all pumped up, but then like, it went downhill for Swayman after that. Cause he didn't get to fight and he was disappointed. Yeah. That's my theory.
Like, I think he kind of took himself out of the game, which we can get to because that's also a problem. There were also some interesting comments from Nikita Zadorov after the game about it. But yeah, I'll do my opening shift first, which is about the Bruins' offensive futility, just continuing to make history. Guys, they landed 13 shots on goal in this one. 13. 1 shot on goal in the third period. In theory, that was still a game heading to the third, 4-2. Not totally a blowout yet. 1 shot on goal in the third period. They've now been held to 25 or fewer shots in 8 straight games, which was already a franchise record at 7. So they're just adding to that, going back to 1959-60 when the NHL started officially recording shots. They've been held to 20 shots or fewer now in 4 of the last 5. They've been held under 15 in 2 of those games. 16 straight periods held to single digits in shots on goal. It's legitimately embarrassing. It's just pathetic. Like, we all know the roster isn't good. We all know this is, mostly an AHL team right now. You should still be able to get more shots on goal than this. It's bad. And I just I almost don't even know what else to say about it. It's like they're just horrible at both ends of the ice right now. And it's, we need the goalie fight because nothing else entertaining is happening with this Bruins team right now. And offensively, especially, they're making history for all the wrong reasons.
So I was originally gonna, for my opening shift, bring up the 2-game stint so far we've seen from Fabian Lysell, but I'm gonna pull an audible here and kind of dovetail off of Scott's a little bit, because honestly, even like a couple of months ago, I was doing some deep diving on the Bruins numbers, and in there, dating back to when the league got away from the original 6, when they first started expanding back in like the, I don't know, maybe
67 they expanded.
Yeah. So dating back to 1967, and I don't have the numbers in front of me because I tweeted this out months ago, but the number of losing seasons the Bruins had since then, the number of plus minus, their plus minus numbers since then, their special teams numbers since then, all major team metrics and analytics from this Bruins team, this is like 2 months ago, was already like among the worst set of Bruins teams since the late 60s. But I say that to say this. I know that, and it's gotten worse. It's gotten much worse since then. But I say all that because right now, this is very necessary for this Bruins organization, what we're seeing happening right now. I tweeted out a few days ago, Scott, I know you retweeted it, but it was something along the lines of, I think, dating back to the 2015 draft. Okay, so we're approaching a decade this June. there were 5 teams. Well, I'll put it this way. 27 of the 32 NHL teams in the last 9 drafts so far have had at least one top 10 pick. Not first round pick, top 10 pick in the draft. At least one. The Bruins were one of 5 teams to not have a top 10 pick in the NHL draft. That's about to change this summer. It's also going to change for 3 of the other teams that were joining the Bruins, the Predators, the Penguins. Who was the other team? The Islanders. All those teams have not had a top 10 pick.
The Islanders might play themselves out of it. They've gone on a little bit of a run here.
That's fair. But my point is, you can't go as long as you've gone, unless clearly you're the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay is the 5th team that has gone a decade without a top 10 pick, and that will stay true this year. They're the anomaly. When you look back at the Bruins Cup run in 2011, whether it was their own picks from the mid-2000s or they traded for some picks in the Kessel deal, the Bruins were able to accumulate some top, 10 picks in the draft. And they were complemented by some eventual core pieces in Bergeron, Krejci, Marchand, Lucic, where they were drafted outside the first round. So, but my point is that Bruins run, you had a little bit of everything. You go back to 2019, the Cup run the Bruins had in 2019, and then like the years ensuing. DeBrusk wasn't a top 10 pick, but he was, I think, 14th overall or 15th. McAvoy was 15th. Like the Bruins had Pasternak was 23rd. The Bruins hit on some first round picks. That complemented that older core. Right now, the Bruins they've been sitting in no man's land as it pertains to first round picks, and they're finally in a position now where they can get back into not only the first round but into the top 10 of draft selections. And it's necessary for this team to go forward. And I know that these games right now are putrid to watch. I'll just say most of the new guys they brought in at the deadline have been good, right? So like at least that's encouraging. And some of the prospects that they got, Will Zellers is killing it down in the USHL. Fraser Minton is, projected to be, a third line guy, but like, okay, that's nothing to sneeze at. So I know this sucks to watch, but where they're going, it's better than where they were going before, which was kind of just like a dead end street where they weren't good enough anyway. At least now you're kind of replenishing the farm system a little bit and you're getting back into the top 10 of the first round. So it's a long-winded way of me saying I know this sucks to watch, but I do believe in my heart that this is appropriate for the betterment of the team going forward. And we just gotta, stick with it for the next, whatever it is, 10 games and see, and then they got to go to work, but at least they have pieces to work with.
So
yeah, can I tell you who you should be rooting for in the last few weeks if you're a Bruins fan? What teams you want to start winning, so that you can get maybe the higher possible pick, because there's only a few teams really that there's a chance the Bruins could really pass in the draft lottery. In terms of like where their actual finish is. Obviously, the lottery is the lottery, but
it doesn't. The NHL is going to rig their lottery anyways. They don't want the Bruins to be irrelevant. Like that they did it with Chicago. They did it with the Rangers. Don't worry about it. They're going to rig it, and the Bruins will get the first overall pick.
Wow. Okay. Conspiracy theories early here today. And so, anyway, I'm still going to say it because Scott rudely interrupted. So there's only a 4 point separating the Bruins from right now by points percentage. They would be the 7th pick. They could foreseeably be top 5 if the Kraken win more games than the Bruins win the rest of the way, and the Flyers win more than the Bruins the rest of the way. And then like maybe the Sabres, but I feel like the Sabres are going to keep losing. So yeah, you'd be a top 5 pick if the Flyers and the Kraken win more than you the rest of the way. So I'd be rooting for.
Good news there. The Flyers are 1-9 in their last 10 games. So.
Well, that's not good news. No, you want them to win, Scott. Were you listening to what I was saying?
Is your sarcasm detector? You got to turn that on, Bridget.
Yeah, no, trust me, I know you, Scott. All right, we know each other. This is going to be a fun road trip to Montreal, isn't it?
You guys go to Montreal.
I'm so mad at the Bruins for not being close enough that like this game could at least maybe kind of mean something for them, because it's clearly going to mean something for Montreal, and like all accounts are that the Bell Center is absolutely rocking these days. Like Canadiens fans are pumped for this team to finally be pushing for a playoff spot for the first time in a while, because even the one year that they went on that improbable run, it was the COVID year where there were no crowds. So like Montreal hasn't had this in pretty much a decade. So like it's going to be an awesome atmosphere regardless, but I just wish the Bruins had something to play for too, instead of barring something unforeseen here over the next week, just falling further and further out of the playoff race, and that game will unfortunately not mean very much for them.
Yeah, I mean Montreal right now is the last team in the East, so they're fighting, they're clawing, and it will be good in that way. I mean, it in the past, like not last year, but the year before, the trip that I took to Montreal was to break the record for most wins in the regular season. That was the last game of the season. That's what it meant back 2 years ago. However, it also was when Bergeron got injured, which is like makes it kind of like an asterisk. It's like, okay, you got the record, but then your captain was hurt for the playoffs, and that was a big issue, obviously, that he wasn't 100%. But anyhow, do we want to go back to Swayman at this point?
Well, I wanted to follow up a little on Brian's opening shift, because Brian, everything you said is right, but my concern remains that you get stuck here for longer than these last 10 games. Because the NHL is littered with teams that thought they were going to have a pretty quick turnaround, go down to the top 10 once and then bounce back. And then they end up with another top 10 pick and another, and it doesn't come together. And now you're 4, 5, 6 years deep and you're still out of the playoffs. And that has been my concern all along, and it remains my concern, because I will say till I'm blue in the face, it is just not as easy as a lot of people make it out to be to turn it around in a year or two. It's just not. Like, most NHL teams don't do it. They fail, and it ends up being longer. So, yes, like the Bruins are going to try to, and we all hope they succeed, because I want them to be relevant. Like, it helps all of us if they're relevant and people are talking about them. But you got to catch some breaks. You got to get lucky. You got to make the right moves. And it's, they're, like I said, they're a long ways away right now. So it's not just hit on this top 10 pick. It's make the right additions this summer. It's, you need other young players to break through. Like, I don't know who those guys are. I don't know if it's Lysell, if it's Patra. Like, Minton certainly could be a help, but like, you need a next wave coming here, not just a draft pick and a free agent signing. Like, you need like a whole wave starting to push. And I don't know if they have that. We're gonna find out, but that's what worries me, is that there's potentially more hockey that looks like this beyond the season.
So I hear your concern, Scott, and I just want to add a few comments to not refute, but just, add more color. If the Bruins were going to be a perpetual lottery team, I hear your concern. But like I said earlier, over the last decade, 27 of the 32 NHL teams have had a top 10 pick. So it's not so much we're talking about the Bruins are going to be the next Buffalo. The Bruins just might be what the other 27 teams have had to do at least one point, and a lot of them have bounced back. A lot of the contenders you're looking at right now have had top 10 picks. Like, and I'm not saying that, to your point, you draft somebody at 7 and you hit a free agent signing and there you go. They have work to do, but all I would say is we have to keep in mind right now, the Bruins are playing without Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm. Those are your top 2 defensemen, one of which is a top 15 D-man in the world when he's on his game. So if you go, it's not like if you enter next year with Lindholm and McAvoy and Pasternak, and we'll get to Swayman later, okay? Because that's not a certainty right now. But my point is, like, I just look at the deadline, and outside of Brad Marchand, I'm sorry, and this might upset some people, but I really don't think the Bruins took as much of a step back if you take away the Marchand trade, player in, player out. Like, getting Husnudinov and Lauko and a 6th-round pick for Justin Brazeau, losing Justin Brazeau and getting those pieces back is not setting you back, it's setting you forward. Trent Frederick, you got a draft pick for him because you got a 2nd-round pick for him because the 4th-round pick you got for him, you've already gotten for Yoki Haru. So, are you missing Frederick if he was the Frederick of 22, 23, 23, 24? Sure. But are you missing the Trent Frederick that we saw this year and the years prior to a couple of years ago? No. Carlo is a loss. Coyle's a loss, but again, he's a loss slotted in the right situation. But you also bring back Casey Middlestat, who's younger and has already higher NHL offensive upside than Coyle. So I understand, the Bruins, there's a culture shock right now. You lost a lot of leadership and a lot of likable people in that room. But if you compartmentalize Brad Marchand leaving and just focus on the rest of the guys in and out, I just don't think the Bruins are much further than where they already were. Again, outside of Marchand. So that's important to mention. And then the McAvoy comes back and Lindholm comes back. That's why I don't think the Bruins are a true lottery team. They might be they might be in the standings this year, but I just think when you're down your top 2 D-man for the majority of the season, let's call it for what it's been, is it a real accurate depiction of them going forward?
No,
I don't know.
They're going to be better because they're going to have those guys back, and they are going to fill some holes in free agency. But there's different levels. Can you be better than the worst team in the NHL, which is what they are at this very moment? Yeah, of course. But then there's there's a next level of, can you be a playoff team? And then there's a level beyond that of, can you be a contender? So how many steps up are they taking? Is it they're going to be better, but still trending towards missing the playoffs, which is where this team was going even when they had McAvoy and Marchand and Coyle and Carlo? That's possible. They could take a decent sized step forward this offseason and still miss the playoffs next year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's more what I meant. Yes, I would agree. They're not going to be one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the NHL next year, but they may very well still be a non-playoff team.
Yeah, and watching last night, and I know LA is actually they're a better team than when you lost to San Jose the night before, but watching what you watched on this road trip so far, the last 2 games, I see what Scott means, because I'm watching hockey that just doesn't look like what we've seen in a while. And some of it, the home games we've watched with our right in front of us, right, in front of our own eyes live. But I still feel like I hit a new level of oh, this isn't going to be good last night, when you just the bleeding just doesn't stop. And giving up 7 goals and seeing the really glaring big issues that the team has in terms of their gap control, their defense, their just the lack of talent, the lack of getting the goaltending that you need. I'm optimistic in that getting back McAvoy and Lindholm will be huge, and that should solve some of the defensive mistakes that have come to be just happening on a minute-to-minute basis now. But that doesn't solve, I think, the holes that they have up front. And nothing can solve the goaltending situation except for Swayman himself right now, because they're not trading Swayman. So it's up to him to get himself back to where he was before and where he needs to be. He's not there. And that's such a huge question mark that even if you figured out the rest of it, you're still relying on you need him to do better than he did this year, and he didn't look great against LA. So,
no, sorry, Bridget.
I was going to say it's hard for me to predict that they'll be a playoff team next year when they've taken enough of a step back to really be in this situation that they're in right now.
Yes, but what I would say, guys, is right now you can't look at the Bruins roster right now on March 24th after selling at the deadline with two of your top two defensemen out and without an entire offseason that includes a top 10 pick in the draft and free agency and just other things that we just don't know. Like, we don't know what the roster is going to look like in 5 months. And so to sit here right now, like, of course, I'm not gonna look at the roster right now and say they're making the playoffs, but that's not going to be the roster. And there's a lot of work to do. I'm not ignoring that fact. But what I'm saying is,
that's kind of my point. It's like, it's not going to be this roster. That means that you have a lot of things to change. Like, when you look at the lineup, like, there's a lot of different moves that need to be made. There's a lot of changes that need to happen because I don't think Vinny Lettieri is going to be like, so like, there's these pieces that are there right now that are, they need to be changed up. And that's a lot of work to find the right pieces there.
It's 100% a lot of work, and it's going to be a challenge, and there is a little bit of risk. But what I'm trying to illustrate is that it's a risk that has to be taken at some point over a 10-year stretch in the NHL by everybody. No NHL team can escape having to, have a challenging offseason with question marks and will we be as good? It's tough. It's going to be a challenge. But all I can tell you guys is that, they weren't going to the promised land with Justin Brazeau, Trent Frederick, and a 32-year-old Charlie Coyle anyway. Like, the reason when Scott says they were already like a non-playoff team with those guys, that's true. But that's why this change is necessary. And I know you guys aren't saying that the Bruins don't need a bit of a reset. I'm just saying, like, I understand that there's a little bit of risk, of course. But in my opinion, to stay status quo and not try to replenish, a desperately needed replenishment in the farm system, especially at the center ice position, which we have to imagine is where they're drafting come June in the first round. But this team I can promise you that the roster as it was, and if let's just say they didn't really buy or sell the deadline, just kind of, kept it as it was and more or less ran back the same roster, that would be another like wasted year. Because guys, we know after watching this season, like, their warts could no longer be covered. Like, and I just think that, yes, Scott saying that, like, you have to be trepidatious about becoming a perpetual like lottery team. I hear that. I think that there's merit to that, but I don't think in my heart of hearts that, like, this is like, it's not. I think that this is kind of like a one-off year where the Bruins found themselves in the bottom 10. I'm not saying that, like, they got to take advantage of it, but I think they're going to have the ability to bounce back more easily than, say, lottery teams of years past, because they currently have key pieces in their primes. And honestly, guys, this is a risk that I'm willing the Bruins to take, and they're be willing to take. And as I said, there's been 27 of 32 teams that have been drafting in the top 10 in the last decade, which means everybody essentially has had an off year, and it just is what it is. It's the cycle of the league.
Yeah, well, the one thing I would push back on that is, like, we're seeing the end product of a lot of, like you mentioned the teams at the top, and it's like, yeah, a lot of them did have top 10 picks at some point in the last 10 years. But for a lot of them, it's like, that's because that was on the tail end of a longer stretch of losing hockey. Like, how many years were the Panthers just irrelevant before they started to build up? 20? I mean, didn't they go like 20 years without making the playoffs? Toronto sucked for 10 years before they finally got, Matthews, Nylander, Marner. Tampa's been really good for a while now. They had a rebuild before that landed them Stamkos.
Hedman.
Washington would be an exception. Like, they've been generally good for a while. And their step back was a quick one. It was really just 2 years and they were back. New Jersey's gone down to the bottom. Ottawa and Montreal are just getting back up after a decade of rebuilding. Detroit's still trying to figure it out a decade into their rebuild.
But they never had players of McAvoy.
Colorado sucked for 10 years before they got McKinnon and that whole core in.
Yeah, but Scott, those teams didn't have players in their primes like McAvoy and Pastrnak right now, to accelerate. I mean, the Bruins have good pieces in place right now.
And I hope it's, as I said, I hope it's a quick turnaround. And it can be if they get a lot of stuff right. I'm just saying you have to get a lot right.
Oh, yeah.
And the possibility exists for it to go the other way. No one ever plans to be in a long rebuild. No one. They all think they're going to be back in 2 or 3 years. And a lot of times, not all the time, a lot of times it doesn't happen. That's all I'm warning against.
I like that Brian's optimistic about this, though.
Well,
I feel like that's he's so excited for this pick that it's he's it's gonna work.
Guys, they need it desperately. I think we can all probably agree, despite your trepidation, Scott, that we're all on board that this needs to at least this risk needs to happen. But again, they got to this position themselves. They were at the trade deadline. I think they were on points percentage. I think they were a bottom. I think they would have had the 10th pick or the 11th pick on points percentage at the deadline. So all I'm saying is they already they got to this deadline and sold for a reason, top down. And so I'm just leaning into what the natural trajectory was of this team. And organically you can sit here and say since the trade deadline, they've gotten worse and they're on a 6-game lose. That's true. And at that, honestly, I think there might be some, we could talk about the Joe Sacco non-offsides challenge, but they might be trying to lean into that a little bit as well. But they were already at this point, relatively speaking. And so I just don't think you should fight it. And I'm not, you guys aren't fighting it, but I'm less afraid of the concern that Scott is just putting out into the world, because if they didn't have Pastrnak, if they didn't have McAvoy, Lindholm, then of course I would be oh wow, this team has bare bones. I just think this team is kind of in a situation where they're one of the worst teams in the league this year, but they've had a lot of man injuries to key players. And I just think that they already have more pieces in place than other teams that have been in the Bruins situation where they have the ability to bounce back quicker. Scott, you say nobody wants a long rebuild. I think certain teams on paper have an ability to actually have a quick turnaround. Whether it happens for Boston, I don't know, but at least on paper, they have key pieces to live out what other teams hope they can do.
Can I ask you a question, Ryan? So are you concerned then at all? Because you're not concerned that they have to go through this process you just said, but are you concerned that at all that culturally they're missing something now?
I think culturally, that's the big question mark for me. I absolutely think that, like I said, on paper, Brad Marchand is a loss on and off the ice. Brandon Carlo's a loss on and off the ice, but to a lesser extent. Coyle to a lesser extent. Frederick and Brazeau, all due respect, best of luck to you guys. I'm all not losing any sleep over that. I think outside of Brad Marchand, I think Coyle, Frederick, Brazeau, and Carlo, I think you can replace those guys. I think they already have.
People underestimate the fact that what Coyle and Carlo actually were to the team because it's behind closed doors a little bit, but we see it a little bit more.
But
Coyle and Carlo are some of the more respected guys on that team and were the voices of reason. They were the guys that were calming some of the younger guys down. They had morphed into that role over the past few seasons of not wearing letters normally, but they were the leaders. They're the guys that came and spoke to us after games. They're the guys who were holding people accountable. So I think maybe I just wanted to put that out there that those two were actually pretty significant cultural losses, because when you put when you have the consistency of personalities like that are pretty calm and pretty, good voices and keeping everybody on track. It's different than like, I'm a little bit worried that there'll be maybe just the evolution of the culture of this team could get worse because we're missing a pillar now from it last, like this season, it was Marchand. The past, it's been Bergeron, Krejci, and before that, Char. Like those guys are all gone now. Like, is Pastrnak going to be able to get that like kind of similar vibe? And I'm a little concerned about the mix and what the culture might be without some of these guys.
I appreciate that, and I agree with it. I think when I was bringing up those names, I was talking about their on ice, like on the ice specifically, production wise. Like I think that Carlo Coyle, Frederick Brezo, I think they're replaceable. I think to an extent they've already been replaced. To what you're talking about, Bridget, the off ice presence, that is where I think that void is more going to be felt and has been felt, and that is why I do think that there's a question mark who's going to step up. Right. So, but again, like Charlie Coyle's contract was up after next year. So Brad Marchand was a pending UFA. Brandon Carlo, he had 2 years left. That's more term. I'm just trying to say, yes, it all happened at once, culture shock, but life without these players, and it's the nature of the league. So but to answer your question, Bridget, I think that there's a culture that has to be carried forward, and I don't know about how that's going to go yet.
Well, even beyond that, like I don't think it was a bad idea even to shake up the culture. Like it wasn't working this season. That this team could never pull itself out. They kept going on slides. They kept letting games get away from them. And that was with those leaders in the room. And I'm not saying any of them were bad leaders. Like they weren't. I think they were all trying to do their best, but it already wasn't working. So we made this very clear at the deadline. Just to reiterate, I don't have any problem with what the Bruins did. Needed to make some moves, needed to shake things up, needed to retool. Absolutely. But now there's the building back up process that you have to get right, and you have to try to get done in relatively quick fashion if this isn't going to be turn into a longer rebuild. And they're gonna go out and they're gonna bring in guys who they think are gonna be part of the leadership group. Don Sweeney told us that after the deadline. He said he called Pastrnak and McAvoy, and while he wouldn't disclose much from those conversations, he made a comment in there about, referencing Shattenkirk and Van Riemsdyk from last year and saying, how do we fill in around them? That's going to be part of this too. So again, I don't have a huge issue with ripping off the Marchand Band-Aid and saying, okay, it's on Pastrnak and McAvoy now, and even peeling away Coyle and Carlo and saying, we're going to change up, call it the leadership group. Maybe there's guys here now that get thrust into that role more. I think Nikita Zadorov's trying to do that. I think Morgan Geekie has found his voice a little more from a guy who prior to this, I think was pretty quiet in the room. And now I think is certainly talking to us more, but I think also talking in the room to the team more. And then they're going to find other guys from outside the organization that they hope are going to help them going forward. So we'll see who that is. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of changes in the summer. But again, those are moves you have to get right. You're not going to bat 1,000. You're not going to get every single one right, but you got to get more of them right than wrong.
Hey, you want to know what else they have to do in the off season? They have to figure out what their coaching staff is going to be. Because I don't think this is what it's going to be next year. So that's another, I feel like there's so many layers to this. And making the right coaching decisions is going to be one of them. Bringing in somebody that can, whether it be a new head coach or assistant, that can help try to right the ship on some of your special teams issues, that can just be the right leaders from the coaching staff's point of view, because this current situation is not going to be what it is next year. So that's another,
Mm.
and that had been the first thing that we knew, like when Montgomery got fired, this has been something we talked about for a long time. Like what the coaching search was going to look like to replace him if it wasn't going to be Sacco, or even if it was just going to be to fill in the empty spot that is, there for an extra assistant that they never added. So yeah, there's that change that's probably coming too.
By the way, how about Jim Montgomery got the Blues on a run heading to the playoffs?
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for Jimmy. Bunch of Tigers in that room. If you get the reference from his first year in Boston as head coach, I think Scott said he always referred to people as Tigers and their jersey numbers and stuff. Yeah, look, there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of change on the horizon. There's already been a lot of change in recent weeks and all season. I mean, you look back at the it kind of reminds me of when you watch a TV show and you look back at the cast in season 1 versus the cast in like season 5 and how much it's changed. You look back to game 1 of this season. You had Jim Montgomery was still here. Brad Marchand was still here. Coyle, Carlo, Frederick, Brazo, like all these guys are still here. They're all gone now. There's a lot of work to be done.
Jordan Osterley.
Oh, Jordan. Yeah. Osterley. Yeah. I forgot about him. But there's a lot of work to be done. And Scott, you bringing up like just heads up, like this might not be a quick turnaround. Like this stuff can go longer than projected. Like that's completely valid. I just think that it's ultimately it's a risk and it's a question mark that clearly most teams face over a decade in the NHL. Again, you look at the teams that haven't had a top 10 finish or bottom 10 finish in the last decade. It's Boston, it's the Islanders, it's the Predators, it's the Lightning, and who was the 5th team? Boston, Tampa, Islanders, Predators. Who was the 5th team? It's gonna bother me. Oh, Pittsburgh. So like Pittsburgh has had success in the last decade, but the Islanders haven't. Like they've been to a couple of conference finals, but the Predators, they went to one Stanley Cup final. Like there's not a ton of success in those teams that haven't had so my point is like it's not like, oh well, they haven't had top 10 finishes, but there's 6 cups between those 5 teams. Like no, like Tampa had 2 and then that was it. So these are question marks and concerns that every team has to go through it over a duration that since Boston has last had to deal with this. So and I just think that they have a couple of more pieces in place than some other teams that have been in a similar position as them heading into this draft this summer. So I hear your concern. I think it's legitimate. It's a good question to pose, good concern to pose. But I think that it's necessary to take this risk and this chance at this time, as we all agree on. And I might have a little bit less doubt about the Bruins being able to turn it around because they have certain pieces in place that other teams haven't. But it's still a question. So, but as for the culture, and I want to give you guys a chance to rebuttal anything I just said, but there was a comment after the game from Nikita Zadorov regarding Jeremy Swayman that I find interesting. And I know Nikita Zadorov is a very transparent, charismatic guy, often intimidates Bridget in the scrums, as she said. So Nikita, if you're listening,
over a foot shorter, so I'm just like I don't even know if he sees me in there, to be honest with you.
Scott, do you have the exact quote, or I mean, I can reference it. It's a pretty simple, statement, but
yeah, go. I don't have it up right now, so go for it.
So, but yeah, basically, Bridget's opening shift was the goalie fight that didn't happen. Which, by the way, refs don't need to do much to get shit on by fans. They make mistakes all the time. The game's fast. The one time in particular I get really pissed at refs is when it feels like they're trying to influence the game or they just show a complete lack of feel for the game. And I think that was the case last night. You just got to let that happen, to Bridget's point. But anyway,
well, I got the quote. So it's a quick answer, right, Brian?
But it's all about it's about the tone, though. It's less about the quote, more about the candor.
And this is something that if you're looking for it, it's like a 12-second clip. Brian retweeted it. So if you're watching this, just go to Brian's Twitter. But it's reporter asks Zadorov, was it nice to see Swayman stick up for Kuznetsov after, him and Kuemper started to get into it? And he said, he just like paused and he was like, is that what happened? And then he said, I don't know, no comment. So you can hear his tone better when you listen to it, but that it was, the vibe of it was like, disapproval was kind of like what you were feeling, I think.
Yeah, it was like he didn't really think that what Swayman was doing was sticking up for a teammate. Like it came across to me like it was almost like he thought Swayman's doing it more for show or more because he just wants to get in a goalie fight at some point than actually sticking up for Kuznetsov. That's how it came across. Whether that's what Zadorov meant for it to come across as, that's how it came across.
And it also came across as stop the puck, don't worry about fighting. And if you've heard, I think Swayman's been asked about this. I don't know if he's been on What Chaos or if it was some other podcast, but I feel like Swayman, or maybe it was just like an interview. I don't know. I feel like I've heard Swayman on record say like he would like to get in the goalie fight someday, just to cross it off his list. And he's made it known he wants to get a goalie goal, a goalie fight, all these things. And like to Scott's point, like, and look, we're not trying to stir up anything here. This is his teammate that made this comment, and if you can read between the lines, what we're saying is not fabricated. Like Zadorov clearly sounded kind of annoyed that in that moment it kind of may have felt like it was more about Jeremy trying to do something for Jeremy and not for the betterment of like the team. And it was just kind of random. And then you go and you give up another 5 goals or 4 goals after that, and you lose 7-2. So it's like, I guess the takeaway from this, Bridget and Scott, and for those listening is, there's been just questions, I think, this year. I mean, Brad Marchand earlier in the year was asked about his contract.
This is where I was going to go, yeah.
He was asked about his contract.
Actually, I have something else after this.
He was asked about his contract negotiation, possibly by one Scott McLaughlin or somebody else. But
I think so, yeah.
But he basically, this is like directly in the wake of the Swayman drama where he was talking about everything under the sun under his podcast and blah, blah, blah. And Marchand said, I'm not going to make any comments about my contract. And it was kind of like an indirect, like, we don't talk about contracts publicly in this dressing room. It kind of seemed like an indirect shot at, or just like, message, not shot, but a message maybe to Swayman and to his other teammates. Like, we don't air out dirty laundry in the media and for the public to hear. And that raised my eyebrows back then. And then Zadorov's comments last night. I'm just curious if Swayman is a guy that players get galvanized around. Like, do they play
I was gonna say there was another one. It was either after the Dallas game with 7 goals against or Winnipeg, which was 8 goals against. Brad Marchand was asked, do you feel bad for Swayman being left in for all the goals? And he said, no, he's part of the team. We all had to deal with it. And it's a couple instances now of teammates who had very easy outs to just give a cliche answer. Marchand could have easily just said, yeah, we let him down. Zadorov could have easily just said, yeah, it was nice to see. They didn't give those answers. Marchand said, no, I don't feel bad for him. He's part of the team. Zadorov said, is that what he was trying to do? And then gave a no comment with a kind of weird tone. Like, it's interesting. I don't know like how deep it goes or what exactly it means, but yeah, it's a couple times now where, and obviously one of them's gone, Marchand's gone, but Zadorov's still here, where teammates I would say have just had an easy out where they could have just had his back and kind of weirdly didn't.
Well, and I will say though, like, thinking of the context that those were at least 2 of those, the 8-goal one and this one, like, they're coming after losses, and like clearly like frustration is an emotion that's being felt during that. Well, like, it's not like they were coming in feeling happy and like, like they were already frustrated, so that could factor into not giving like the nice answer. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, but again, hockey players are programmed to just say the cliche, and through wins and losses. I mean, your point's not invalid, Bridget, but it could just be easy to be like, yeah, I don't know.
Not when you're frustrated at someone.
Yeah, but they can be these guys are just media trained. Like they talk to the media after every practice and pregame skate and game. Like they know how to give nothing. They know how to say something by giving nothing. And I just feel like Brad Marchand is a guy who's been around for a long time. He knows how to handle the media in a hockey market. Like I don't know. I just think that there's the ultimate question, like I said, is Swayman a guy that his teammates want to play for? And like obviously they're not going out there wanting to give up goals because they do or don't like somebody. But I just find it interesting that because you have to remember this season has played out. Everything that could go wrong for this Bruins team has gone wrong. But the Bruins were already the soup du jour in the hockey world before puck drop back in October. The Jeremy Swayman contract negotiations went very public. Before the season, you had Don Sweeney in a verbal spat with Spittin' Chicklets. You had Cam Neely going out to the media at a press conference saying, I have 64 million reasons why I'd be playing hockey right now. It got very ugly. And the Boston Bruins team name was getting dragged in the media, mainstream media, social media. Like they were the entertainment that everybody was glad wasn't happening to their team. This is before puck drop. You don't think those players in the dressing room were kind of like Jeremy, your stuff is your stuff, but like we are all being represented as the Boston Bruins right now, and you're kind of dragging us through the mud with you because you went on a podcast over the summer and talked about your negotiations and what you think you're worth and what you want to reset the goalie market, and then your representation was clearly feeding information to the biggest hockey podcast in the world, and then our management said what they said. It's been ugly, and I just think that this is coming off the heels of Swayman being, on the Amazon Prime, documentary last postseason. I think hockey players are for the most part very grounded, but I could see why his teammates might be like, he might be liking the limelight a little too much, and maybe I don't know. None of us know what goes on behind closed doors, but these comments, to Scott's point, have been interesting, and I'll just leave it at that. And us three here are three voices, we're three opinions. But for those listening, how do you feel about it? Like comment, like here on the video, like tweet at us because we want to hear what you guys all think too. Like everybody is hearing the same commentary. We're all following and watching the same team. Like we can't be alone in thinking that there could be something off in the room. And Bridget, to your point about the culture earlier, you're looking at McAvoy, Pasternak, and ideally your star goaltender, or what we all thought was going to be a star goaltender heading into the season. And if there's any issues there, it's safe to say that could be problematic. And I'm not saying there is issues, but if there are, I mean, we're a hockey podcast. We got to talk about hypotheticals.
Yeah, and it probably all has a different feel and different tone if Swayman slams the door shut after that. Like if that get fight or non-fight, like if that gets him fired up and he's great the rest of that game, maybe keeps it 3-2, gives the team a chance, like we're probably not talking about all this. Instead, the goal he gives up that makes it 4-2 is a shot from the right dot that beats him along the ice because he's stuck to the left post and it has a bad angle on it. The goal that makes it 5-2 is Quinton Byfield off the rush, beating him clean blocker side. Again, from the dot or just outside the dot, like not right on top of him. Yes, it's a good shot. It's one you like your goalie to save. Game's already out of control by 7-2, but I didn't like that goal either. He gets beat clean from the high slot, and then he's looking around for goalie interference. And you see the replay, and it's like, there's no interference. There's nothing even close to interference. Like, what are you complaining about? So, yeah, that all leaves a bad taste because the way it looks is like I mentioned kind of off the top, it almost seems like Swayman took himself out of the game. Like mentally, he got caught up in trying to get into a fight and then didn't go perform the rest of the game. I'm not saying it was all on him. I had someone tweeting at me saying like I was trying to blame this game all on Swayman, and I'm like, no, like the whole team sucked. Like we talked about, they got 13 shots on goal. They had 1 in the third period. Like, of course, it's not all on Swayman, but he wasn't good, and like I don't know how you could argue that he was. Like he gave up some goals that he should have stopped, and that makes it all feel worse, and that makes Zadorov's comments more interesting because it came after that kind of game.
How does Korpisalo look in front of that same team or behind that same team? Now I know the Sharks are the last team in the NHL, but like Korpisalo's games, the Bruins are more competitive. Now maybe it's bad matchups for Swing. I don't know, but it's the same shitty team in front of Korpisalo as it is Swayman, and it just seems like I don't know. There's a more competitive nature when he's in net from the team. I don't know, but yeah, ultimately it's I'm sure it might get explained away at a future media availability, but for now it was just interesting to hear. And to Scott's point earlier, it's not the first time this year where there's been an opportunity for a teammate to kind of put water on the fire of a Swayman question, and instead they kind of add a little bit of gasoline to it. Bridge and Scott, I know we don't have a ton of time left. I just a couple of quick comments. Number one, somebody tweeted out that there was a video of the Los Angeles Kings broadcast saying that Andy Brickley was telling them that the Bruins are looking at kind of McAvoy as the guy to shoulder maybe some, carry the team going forward. It was kind of vague. Did you guys have any opinions on that? Because obviously we've talked about how Pastrnak has stepped up this year, and as it pertains to future captaincy, that maybe he had the edge there. Did that catch your guys' ears at all?
It did. I feel like that Kings broadcaster maybe violated the like media dining room, chitter chatter code. Like, yes. I think that's probably not something Brick would have probably doesn't care too much, but I'm sure that was said in an environment where it was more just like, hey, catching up, shooting the breeze, and not like, yeah, take this to the air, because obviously if Brick wanted that on the air, he would have said it himself at some point.
Yeah, or you just say, I heard from someone, like, right. Not like naming the person. Because we've all been there. We all sit together. We all, chatter, gossip, whatever you want to say, like, while we're eating dinner or while we're on the 9th floor, and like, there's certain things you don't actually put on air.
Yeah, you just don't put a name on it.
Or yeah, but also I do feel like it's an opinion though, right? Like, I don't know if you can read too much into it. Besides, that's just where he's got an informed opinion, probably a little bit, but at the end of the day,
that's it. Like it's very possible that Brick has heard from someone, well placed in the Bruins organization, that they consider McAvoy the leader of the next era, and not Pastrnak. Like that's possible that Brick's heard that from someone.
Don't forget, Brick has 2 former teammates in the management suite every game, right? So I mean, like, it's not like to say he has an informed opinion, Bridget, is very accurate. But let's say that informed opinion is indeed how they're feeling. Do you guys feel? Maybe, Bridget, I know you've said in the past that Pastrnak has made comments he doesn't want to be the captain. Maybe that changes over time, but if that's the case, do you think they're choosing the right person as that main face for the media to represent their team? I mean, an original 6 team does not take. You can say all the hockey cliches. You don't need a letter to be a captain, and you don't. But when an original 6 team, or any team, but an original 6 team chooses somebody to put that C on their jersey, there's a lot of thought that goes behind it, and there's reasons for it. So do you guys personally feel strongly one way or the other, McAvoy versus Pastrnak, or they're both good choices? Either way, it's fine.
So I don't feel strongly one way or the other, because I do think that, like, so Marchand, when he was at the Garden a couple of weeks ago, right after the trade, said he sees it as like a Chara Bergeron situation where no matter what, like, they're going to be leading together, and that they have to be on the same page. And that's true. Whichever one of them has a C, the other has an A, and is the right-hand man. So no matter what, it has to be a tag team and they have to be on the same page. So in that sense, like, I don't feel super strongly about which one deserves a C. In the moment, it's hard not to get kind of caught up in the fact that, like, this stretch right now since the trade deadline is the toughest stretch that the Bruins have gone through since those guys came into the league, and it's almost all falling on Pasternak to lead because he's the only one playing. He's the only one wearing a letter for the games. McAvoy hasn't gone on the road. He's staying in Brighton rehabbing, which isn't any kind of knock on him. Like, that's what he should be doing. He needs to focus on his rehab, and that's easier to do at home. But it does create a situation where it's like, this team's going through a lot right now, and McAvoy can't be there for all of it, which I think just creates a unique challenge. So, like, it's hard to kind of pull back and look at the bigger picture because what is happening in the moment right now is that Pasternak, by default, is the number one leader at this moment.
Yeah, and in the essence of time, I will second that because a lot of that is how I feel too. And then maybe like the other person you see leading is like Zadorov, definitely attempting to be the person that's there for, comment, and you see what he does in games too, tries to set a tone, which is admirable, like him trying to get the fight in them sometimes, but obviously, yeah, they're going to need to give another guy a letter at some point as well because they lost Marchand and
well, and by the way, like it may very well be another guy who's been out, and that's Hampus Lindholm. Like, he might have an A.
Yeah, and I like Lindholm. He's another good choice. But because Scott has a meeting coming up, I did want to make sure we did like a little bit on Lysell.
Yeah. Well, Bridget, I think you guys may have had a opportunity to speak about him more detail on Sunday Skate. So I know that's a different, it's a different forum for you guys. So definitely reshare. I'll just say quickly, like, I think that, like I said to you guys before we started recording, I think Georgi Merkulov comes up to Boston and you watch him and you say, okay, I see the creativity, I see the, the shot and the hands, but the size and lack of speed at the NHL level is kind of on display, where maybe in Providence in the A he gets away with it. Not just gets away with it, but excels down there. But Lysell came up these last two games and he has, as we've always kind of known, I mean, but he has NHL speed. In fact, I would say he has above average NHL speed. Like, his speed translates to the NHL level. The offensive production hasn't been there, but his first call up, or the first game he played earlier this year, Scott mentioned that while he had a good forecheck that led to the Bruins opening goal, he didn't have any shot attempts. He's had shot attempts. It seemed like it was a point of emphasis.
He had the most on the team Sunday night.
There you go. So he was showcasing his speed. He was showcasing his ability to get shots on. But more importantly, I was pleasantly surprised at his ability on the walls. I thought that, he broke the puck out on the wing a few times, which is, you want that at the NHL level. You expect that. But guys flub, breakouts all the time. And
it's been a weakness for him at times. Like, Mark Divers pointed this out. Like, that's been a question mark for Lysell for a long time. So it's probably going to come and go a bit if he sticks around longer. But the fact that it's there right now is encouraging.
Yeah. So just like, obviously you want offense from him, offensive production going forward. That's what his bread and butter would be at the NHL level. But you still have to have the ability to do the little things right. And I thought that he was hard on pucks. I thought he was supporting teammates. So, not sexy on the score sheet, but I thought that, the little things that a coach looks for and management looks for, the small details, I thought he showcased himself well in those first couple of games in that department.
Yeah, these past two games, he has 5 shots on goal, more shot attempts, obviously, but 5 of them on goal. And no points, obviously. The Bruins really haven't been scoring too much, but you can see him come out with like the shooting mentality. And I think that's when he's at his best as well, when he's like knows that he's been given the leash to be like, shoot, we want you to shoot. We want you to get out there and be the guy that whips it on net right away. And you saw him executing that. And didn't he seem a little bit less nervous than that first time he was out there? That the first game that he got where he only played 11 minutes, didn't have a shot on goal. Like, not that he played bad in that game, like we mentioned. There was a lot of other stuff that you had to kind of pay close attention to realize that, he was doing some of the things right that he needed to. But now that you see him know that, okay, my role is that I'm going to shoot and that I'm going to, this is what they're looking for me, it makes him feel a little bit more comfortable to play the way that he likes to play, which is downhill offense. And it does stink that he didn't get a little bit more power play time. I mean, that just was how it panned out, because I think he maybe only had 20 seconds of power play time, but it was just because the first unit was out there for so long, so you didn't get to see that too much. But yeah.
Well, and unfortunately plays the same spot on the power play as David Pastrnak, who stays out there for a minute and a half or sometimes the full 2 minutes.
Exactly. So he was out there for maybe like 10 seconds of ozone time on the power play. So I would have liked to have seen it just to get the, get an assessment on it. But I do think he's looked pretty confident the last 2 games. I think he's doing what they asked him to do. And certainly what maybe a mentor or like previous coach or, someone said, if your stat line at the end of the game doesn't say you had at least 3 shots, then you're in trouble, especially if there's no points on there either. So he took the assignment and he's been doing it.
Guys, 2 quick hitter questions. It could be a yes or no answer from the 2 of you. First of all, Elias Lindholm, he has seemed a little bit better offensively generating since the deadline, at least to my eyes. I wasn't able to watch some of these West Coast games in full live, so I'm more so asking you guys than I am giving my opinion on this one. But it just kind of from afar looks like he's just, I don't know if it's playing with some quicker line mates or maybe 4 nations, but has he looked don't get me wrong, not for the price tag, and it's not what you want him. That's not what you're paying a number 3 center to do, is to generate a couple of chances. Or he's been turned into a number 3 center. But have you noticed any differences in his game the last 3 weeks or so offensively?
It's hard to judge. Like a lot of this team, I thought there was a boost there right after the deadline. Then I thought it went pretty quiet. I mean, he gets the goal last night. Pretty nice finish, but let's be honest, kind of lucked into it. Like, he turned the puck over on the entry. He flipped it right into a Kings player, who then immediately turned it back over to Cole Koepke, and it leads to the goals. So kind of made a bad play at first that then lucked into a good play and a goal. So I don't know, maybe like very slightly, but I can't sit here and say I've been all that encouraged by Elias Lindholm or, quite frankly, anyone else on the team. So.
All right. Well,
I'll go with that too.
You'll go with that. All right. Last question for me before Scott goes. Bridget and Scott, did Joe Sacco and the Boston Bruins intentionally not challenge that goal for offsides against the San Jose Sharks? Because, first of all, Joe Sacco's explanation as to why they didn't, the first thing that came to my mind is challenge it and let them tell you that. But B, and I know you might get a penalty, but it's like at that point in the game, like you might as well risk it. But also, I thought San Jose completely was in possession of the puck while also being offsides. I think a lot of people feel the same way. I'm not losing sleep over it because it's helping their draft position. But do you guys think that there was some gamesmanship there at all?
So I said this on Sunday Skate. I, at the time, thought they made a mistake not challenging. I tweeted that I thought they made a mistake. I went to bed thinking they made a mistake. I woke up Sunday morning, had a direct message on Twitter from someone who knows this stuff better than me and said that would have stood up as a goal had they challenged. And then I heard Billy Jaffe say the same. Billy Jaffe said he talked to 4 people who said it all said it would have stood up. And the reason is because the rule is, while we don't agree with it, we all know he was in possession. Like, he never lost possession of the puck. But the way the rule is written is that if it's not physically on your stick, touching your stick, it's not considered possession. So the puck enters the zone, his teammate tags up, and then he touches the puck again. I think it's stupid. That to me should be offsides. But by the letter of the law, from people who know this better than I do, it's not. That's onside. That's a good play, I guess.
All right. Well, then there goes the conspiracy theory. But at least
then I heard Judd during the broadcast make a comment, like just like an offhanded remark about like offside, and then Jaffe and the studio crew in, I believe, the first intermission were talking about the Kopitar goal as maybe being offside too, and not challenging that one. So yeah, it's happened a few times. It's an annoying system, and the downfall of challenging when it's like really a close call is that you get a penalty in the case of challenging offside specifically. So yeah.
Well, I'd rather the draft odds go up than get a meaningless win over San Jose in March when you're out of the playoffs. All right.
Scott. Very last thing from me in 30 seconds.
Yes. 6
Hockey East teams in the NCAA tournament, ties a record for Hockey East or any other conference. 8 New England teams in the NCAA tournament, also ties a record for New England. Congrats to Maine on winning their first Hockey East championship since 2004. And congrats to Bentley on winning Atlantic Hockey and making NCAAs for the first time ever.
Yep.
Yes.
UConn's first ever trip as well.
And UConn has a chance to maybe get some revenge on Maine if they meet each other again.
Yeah, they're both in the same regional in Allentown.
Yep, that's going to be a fun one. And Scott and I will be at the Manchester Regional. I'm broadcasting for PC Radio. Scott's covering it for the station.
Nice.
So we'll both be there. I got my credential approved, so I know I'm going to be there. So
I like when college hockey makes its way to Verizon, or I think it's SNU Arena now. But
yeah,
Manchester hockey's fun.
And then I put the mailbag graphic up, just a reminder, mailbag episode, next episode. So send them in before Thursday, and we'll try to answer your question.
skatepod@weei.com, Twitter, YouTube, all the good spots. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will talk to you Wednesday. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.